Good morning, boys and girls. This is the very first part of Chapter 13. Chapter 13 is the last chapter of the book. It's a very long chapter, so I'm guessing it will take us a few days to read it. But let's get started. Oh, when we last left Jeremy, the last words were, Jeremy blinked when he was trying to find Maine and not Maine. Jeremy blinked. "What are you doing here?" he asked in astonishment. Did you think about who that might be? It was Miss Priest, the librarian. She wore a crown of daisies in her hair. She stared at Jeremy, and he saw something terrible in her eyes, fierce and sad and angry all at the same time. "Greetings, Thatcher," she said. "Did you bring the teeth?" Jeremy nodded and held up the bag. Then, thinking that Miss Priest might not be able to see him in the darkness, he whispered, "Yes." "And the skins?" "Yes, and the eggshells." Miss Priest murmured her approval, then turned to Tiamat and made a deep curtsy. That's a bow. "And how are you tonight, milady?" To Jeremy's astonishment, Tiamat raised her head and shot a line of flame 15 feet into the sky. "Indeed," said Miss Priest. She sounded impressed. She turned to Jeremy and whispered, "You have done well." "Thank you." For a moment, no one said anything else. Finally, Jeremy asked, "What happens next?" "You may go home if you wish," replied Miss Priest. "Your job is finished." Jeremy looked at her in shock. Just like that, it was over? He handed his dragon to a strange woman on a dark corner, and that was the end of it? "I don't want to go home," he said. "Then, if you are feeling brave, you may come with me." Jeremy swallowed. He wasn't feeling brave at all, but neither did he feel like just letting go of Tiamat. "Where are we going?" "To a place you've already been. She pressed her finger to his lips, warning him to silence. "Careful, Hatcher," she whispered. "This is a strange night, and words have more power than you think. Even under the best of circumstances, try not to use them unnecessarily." Jeremy nodded. "Turn off your flashlight." He did as she asked. Miss Priest took his hand and led him into the darkness. The mist was damp against his face. It wove around about the trunks of the trees, gleaming silver in the moonlight. The night was oddly silent, as if the darkness were swallowing all sound. Even that of his footsteps. When he looked beneath him to be sure that Tiamat was still there, he could see her green eyes glowing in the dark. "No need to look," she informed him. "You can tell I'm here." Jeremy nodded. Even if she couldn't see the gesture, he knew she would sense his response. After a while, he could see a light through the fog. As they drew closer, Jeremy saw that it came from the magic shop. But the store was not sitting at the end of a street, as he had seen it before. It was in a forest clearing. Jeremy swallowed nervously. The door swung open as they approached. Miss Priest entered first. Jeremy followed. Tiamat came last, tucking her wings against her sides. When Jeremy turned to watch, he had a sense that the door was stretching itself to let her pass. He blinked, and she was in. The hoot of an owl made him look back to the back of the store. Greetings, said Mr. Elives. He shuffled across the floor, stopping in front of Tiamat, who took up most of the available space. He examined the dragon for a few moments, then turned to Jeremy and said, "It appears you have done a good job." "Thank you." "What is her spoken name?" "Tiamat." Mr. Elives snorted. "Pfft. The queen of the universe? Well, her line always did have a streak of vanity. Of course, that's not her real name. She can't tell you that." Jeremy felt a twinge of jealousy. Did the old man know her real name? Mr. Elives turned to Miss Priest. She had moved to one of the counters where she was unrolling the skins Jeremy had brought. How is that coming?" he asked. "It will be ready," said Miss Priest without looking up. "You'd best see to your part." Muttering to himself, Mr. Elives gestured to the dragon and then shuffled out of the room, folding her wings and pulling her in her sides so she could get around the counter. Tiamat followed. Jeremy started after her, but Miss Priest put a hand on his shoulder. "Stay here," she whispered. Jeremy jumped. He had thought she was still at the counter. When Miss Priest saw that he wasn't going to argue, she returned to her work. After a bit, Jeremy walked over to see what she was doing. As he watched, she began matching the teeth that he had brought with some pieces of dark wood. "What? Why are you doing that?" "I'm going to make a gate." She picked up one of the teeth and inserted it into a notch that had been carved in the end of one of the sticks. "You may help if you wish," she said, without looking at him. Jeremy thought he caught a hint of a challenge in her voice. He hesitated. Helping her build a gate to send Tiamat to another world felt a little like helping to weave a rope for his own hanging. But it was better than standing around and feeling helpless. "What do I do?" he asked. Miss Priest picked up one of the sticks. It was about as long as her index finger and slightly thinner than a pencil. "See this notch?" she said, pointing to one end of the stick. "You slide the tooth in like this." As she spoke, she inserted a small tooth into the stick. The tooth, which was wide at the base, tapered to a wicked point. The base fit snugly into the notch. At first, Jeremy thought the combination of stick and tooth looked a little like a spear. Then he noticed the hole drilled into the end of the other end of the stick, and decided that the whole thing looked more like a big needle. "You try," said Miss Priest. Jeremy picked up one of the smaller teeth, but when he tried to slide it into the stick, his hand slipped and he jabbed the tooth into his own palm. It disappeared into the flesh. Crying out, he pressed his thumb against the wound to stop the bleeding. "That was an interesting thing to do," said Miss Priest. "We'll have to check to make sure we still have enough." Jeremy watched her spread the remaining sticks and teeth across the counter. Wasn't she going to offer him a bandage or something? Miss Priest matched the sticks to the teeth. "Good," she said. "We have just the right number." "What about this?" asked Jeremy, moving his thumb to show her his cut. Miss Priest looked at him. "What about it?" Jeremy glanced at his hand. The wound was gone. All that remained to show what had happened was a smear of drying blood and a short white line where the tooth had entered his skin. Well, that's interesting. That sounds like a magical thing to happen. All right, we will read more later. Hope you're enjoying this. Okay, bye-bye.